I've been living here in South Italy for 6 years this year, and I can tell you from my own personal experience, there are 4 stages that you go through when you live here in Italy. Now, do I think that you will also experience the same 4 stages that I'm talking about today? Not necessarily. It depends very much on you and your own personal circumstances, but I can guarantee that at least one of these stages you will experience in your time here. And so I thought we'd get into it today, because if you're planning to move to Italy and you want to know what everyday life really is like here in South Italy especially, you've come to the right place. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on my future content, and let's get into these stages. Stage 1, blissful ignorance. This is that really dreamy period, otherwise known as the honeymoon period, where everything seems perfect and wonderful. You cannot see any negativity in the situation. You can only see the positive aspects. You are living la dolce vita, what all of those people on YouTube and on TikTok told you wasn't possible. You are experiencing. You're enjoying the weather. You're indulging in the cuisine. You're amazed at how friendly the people are here. You're blown away by the architecture and the monuments, and you're captivated by the magic of living in an Italian town or city. Everything seems perfect, and you are ignorant to the everyday reality of life here in Italy. You're very much in a bubble, and life feels wonderful. And you question, why didn't I do this sooner? This is the life I've always wanted to live. This phase, this stage, is something that occurs very early on in your journey of living here in Italy. And it's something that is a very special period. I think there is a lot to be said for focusing on gratitude and really appreciating where you live. But exactly how long this stage lasts depends very much on your own personal circumstances. If you don't have to have a lot of contact with the bureaucratic offices, for example, or you don't have to work here, then this stage may continue for many months. However, if you have to start to interact in everyday situations and deal with everyday matters, then that is when stage 2 tends to kick in. Stage 2, the knock at the door. This is when reality starts knocking. It's not a full-on bang the door down experience, it's just a gentle tap. Tap, 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 tap. Reality is letting you know that it's here. And this stage usually occurs when you have to deal with your first bureaucratic hurdle, for example, or if you have difficulties communicating with someone, for example, or your expectations are somewhat different to the reality in a particular situation. Or you start working here in Italy and you start to really understand what the conditions are like. This is when reality will give you that gentle knock at the door and remind you that you're not on holiday. This is your everyday life. Now, this can actually feel really, really uncomfortable. And I remember when I went through this stage, I was like, oh goodness, this isn't really what I'd expected. And I think, we all come here with this dreamy romanticism of Italy, but when you really do start living here and reality knocks at your door, that's when you start to see things from a totally different perspective. And, if you don't have a strong enough why at this point, that is when a lot of people will get cold feet and decide that maybe this wasn't the best decision, and perhaps, they'll go back to their country or they'll try somewhere new. But essentially, it is an uncomfortable stage, and it is that moment where you're like, okay, I've got to start taking this seriously, because I'm not here for just 2 weeks. I'm here for an extended period of time, however long that may be. So I've kind of got to start accepting this place for what it is. And generally, when you are in this place of discomfort, often stage 3 tends to arrive. Stage 3, comparisonitis. I've literally given this stage the name as if it were a medical condition, but it kind of is in a way, because this is the stage in your journey of living in Italy where you're going to start comparing your current life with your previous life. And often the comparison is not favorable against Italy. So you're going to be reminiscing about how your life was in your old country, how it was better organized, how you had greater availability of services and products, how, you felt that there was a different mindset. This is where this comparison tends to kick in, because you're starting to see that life here maybe isn't exactly as you'd imagined it to be. And so it's very natural that in those moments you are going to reminisce and look back to the past and make that comparison. Now, this part can be very dangerous, because if you spend too long in comparison, you run the risk of ruining what is a fantastic opportunity ahead of you in the terms of starting a new life here in Italy. Comparison can only take you so far. What you need to do with comparison is you need to reframe it and use it as a way to enhance your life here in Italy rather than hinder it. If you're interested to dive a bit deeper into my thoughts about comparison and how to reframe it, I'll link up here to one of my first podcast episodes where I talk about comparison and why it doesn't always have to be the thief of all joy, as that famous quote often states. However, when you're in this stage of living here in Italy, you do have to be careful, because you can easily become very negative and despondent when you're constantly making this comparison. Comparison is okay up to a certain degree, but when you cross that line, it's enough to leave you feeling stressed, anxious, maybe even depressed. And that's when it becomes unhealthy. So you've got to be super, super careful with what you're comparing, and you need to kind of remember where you're at and the reality of your current situation. Everything in life is relative. Maybe you did have a better experience in your previous country, but then I'm sure there were negative aspects to life there as well. Otherwise, why would you be sitting here now here in Italy? So this is what you must remember at all times. Comparison is a very natural human reaction to situations. However, it isn't always healthy. So you have to be really, really careful about this stage, because it could really leave you feeling pretty shitty. So once you've gone through this comparisonitis, this is when you tend to arrive full-blown into stage 4. Stage 4, barefaced reality. What do you mean Italy isn't like the movies? But I thought it would be La Dolce Vita. This is the moment, my friends, when you realize that reality has well and truly hit. You are dealing with stressful situations. You have periods where you're like, oh my goodness, but the life here is just not what I expected it to be. You're working, you're creating routines, your life is developing a sense of normality. You've gone through the honeymoon phase, you've gone through the blissful ignorance, you've had the knock at the door. Reality has started to give you a taste of what's to come. Then you've had the whole comparisonitis, where you've been negatively comparing Italy to your country. And then you arrive here, barefaced reality, where you're like, actually, this is my life here. And this is the point where you have to be a bit serious with yourself, because living in Italy requires a huge dose of acceptance. Italy is like the most imperfect country I've lived in, but you have to accept it for what it is. As I said in another video, Italy is perfectly imperfect. There are so many beautiful things that you can obtain and benefit from by living here in Italy. But if you don't accept this place for what it is, you will never see any of that. And this is where you have to understand that you're going to be carving out routines for yourself. Yes, that might mean that you're slogging away here in Italy in the same way that you did in your old country, but that's a routine that you're creating for yourself here in Italy. Now, I think about my work situation as well, and it's really funny because I was talking about this the other day with some people here, and I was literally like, I worked a lot in the UK, like in the police. I used to work 12-hour days. I had my business. I used to work pretty much 7 days a week. I'm not shy when it comes to hard work, but there is something about the working culture here that leaves me exhausted, and I don't know what it is. There's just something really, really strong about the work ethic here that I feel the most tired that I have ever felt in my entire life. Even when I was working myself to the bone back in the UK, this here in Italy is the most tired I've ever felt. And so this is something else. You've got to make these adjustments. You've got to accept life here for what it is. It's not going to be how your life was before. This is a totally different experience. And when you are in front of what reality really is, that's when you understand if this is really going to be the life for you. And, you know, this is the moment when you might decide, you know, I've had a flavour of it, I've had a taste. It's not for me, I'm going back. Or it could be that defining moment where you're like, I'm not giving up on this and I'm sticking it through and I'm going to make the absolute most of this opportunity and adapt my life accordingly, just as if you were in your own country. If there are things you are not happy with, you can change them, you can alter them, you can do things differently. All of that is still very much within your control. And so I think it's very interesting how we move through these stages. And I think it's also really interesting how we respond when reality does bite, because it will, and it does always. And I think that is the moment when you realize if Italy really is your home from home, or if it was just this romanticized notion that you carried around within your mind. I hope this video has given you a bit of an insight into the journey you'll go through once you start living here in Italy. Comment below if you can relate to any of these stages, share your experiences. I'm here to build a community to all inspire each other and educate each other, most importantly, about the reality of everyday life in South Italy. I'll see you in the next video.